Have you ever felt deeply connected to someone, yet strangely unsure at the same time? Like there was something real between you, something meaningful, but also something confusing that you couldn't fully explain. In the beginning, everything feels effortless. Conversations flow naturally. You feel understood, noticed, maybe even valued in a way you haven't felt in a long time. There is comfort in their presence, a quiet sense that this connection is different from the others you've known before. But then, slowly, something changes. Not in an obvious way, not in a way you can clearly point to, just small shifts that leave you questioning yourself. Their responses become shorter, their energy feels distant, the warmth that once felt natural starts to feel uncertain, and that's when the confusion begins. You start wondering, was it something I said? Did I expect too much? Or did I imagine the depth that I thought was there? What makes this situation so difficult is not rejection, it's uncertainty. Because when someone leaves clearly, you can accept it, you can grieve it, you can move forward. But when someone stays, yet feels emotionally distant, your mind doesn't know how to respond. And here's the truth most people don't realize. This kind of confusion isn't random. There is often a hidden psychological reason behind it. Sometimes, the person you're connecting with feels emotions differently than you do. Sometimes closeness doesn't comfort them, it scares them. And when fear meets connection, the result isn't clarity. It's distance, silence, and emotional uncertainty. But understanding this pattern is the first step towards seeing the connection and yourself in a completely different way. At some point in this connection, you probably noticed a shift that didn't make sense. Things were going well. Conversations felt easy. The connection felt natural, maybe even exciting. You started feeling closer, more open, more emotionally invested. It felt like something meaningful was finally beginning. And then, without warning, they pulled away. Not in a dramatic way, not with harsh words or clear rejection, just a quiet distance that left you confused. This is one of the most misunderstood behaviors when it comes to avoidant personalities, because from the outside, it looks like they stopped caring. It feels like they lost interest. It feels like something changed inside them. But often, the truth is very different. For someone with avoidant tendencies, emotional closeness doesn't always feel safe. In fact, the closer they feel to someone, the more pressure they may feel internally, not because the connection is wrong, but because it feels too intense. When emotions begin to deepen, something inside them becomes alert. They start to feel vulnerable. They start to feel exposed. And vulnerability, for them, can feel uncomfortable, even frightening. This reaction usually isn't about you. It's about their past experiences, their emotional habits, and the way they've learned to protect themselves. Many avoidant individuals have learned over time to associate closeness with loss of control. So when feelings get stronger, their mind shifts into protection mode. They create distance, not to hurt you, but to calm their own emotional discomfort. And here's the painful part for the person on the other side. This distance feels personal. You may start questioning your value. You may feel rejected or unwanted. You may believe that their withdrawal means they don't care. But in many cases, they do care, sometimes more than they know how to handle. Strong emotions can feel overwhelming to them. Instead of moving closer, they instinctively step back, hoping that distance will reduce the intensity they feel inside. Understanding this doesn't remove the pain, but it changes the way you interpret their behavior. Because when you realize that distance is sometimes a response to fear, not lack of feeling, you begin to see the situation with more clarity. And that clarity is what helps you stop blaming yourself for something that was never fully about you. One of the clearest signs that an avoidant still has feelings, but struggles to handle them, is the sudden distance that appears right when things start getting serious. At first, everything feels natural. They show interest, they engage in conversations, they seem present and emotionally available. You feel a sense of progress, like the connection is moving in a meaningful direction. Then something changes. not because of an argument, not because of a clear misunderstanding, but because the connection itself begins to feel deeper. You might notice that just when conversations become more personal, they become quieter. Just when emotions feel stronger, they become harder to reach. They may start responding less often. They might suddenly seem busy all the time, or they may keep conversations short, avoiding topics that once felt easy to discuss. This shift can feel confusing and even painful. From your perspective, it feels like rejection. It feels like you did something wrong or pushed too hard. You may start replaying past conversations in your mind, searching for the exact moment where things changed. But often, this distance isn't about losing interest. It's about feeling overwhelmed. When emotions begin to deepen, avoidant individuals sometimes experience an internal pressure they don't fully understand. Closeness feels unfamiliar. Emotional intensity feels risky. And instead of moving forward, their instinct is to step back. Distance becomes their way of managing discomfort. They may not even realize they're doing it. To them, creating space feels like regaining control. It gives them time to breathe, to reduce the emotional intensity they feel building inside. Unfortunately, for the person on the receiving end, this silence feels deeply personal. You may start doubting yourself. You may feel ignored or unimportant. You may wonder why someone who once seemed so present suddenly feels emotionally unavailable. But here's what makes this sign so important to recognize. The timing of their distance often reveals the truth. If they withdraw right when things begin to feel meaningful, right when emotions become real, it may not be because they don't care. It may be because they care more than they know how to handle. And understanding this pattern helps you stop blaming yourself for their silence and start recognizing that their distance is sometimes a response to emotional fear, not emotional absence. Another powerful sign that an avoidant may still have feelings, even if they never say it directly, is the presence of mixed signals combined with quiet, subtle care. This is where things become especially confusing. One moment, they seem distant, cold even. Their words feel short, their tone feels neutral, and their reactions feel limited. It can feel like they are emotionally closed off, like they are trying to keep you at arm's length. But then, something unexpected happens. They check in on you after a long silence. They remember small details you once mentioned. They show concern in ways that are quiet but noticeable. And suddenly, you're left wondering, if they don't care, why do they still do these things? This is what mixed signals often look like with avoidant personalities. They may not express emotions openly. Saying, "I miss you" or "I care about you" might feel uncomfortable or unfamiliar to them. Instead of using words, they show care in indirect ways. Sometimes it's a short message at an unexpected time. Sometimes it's reacting to something you shared. Sometimes it's simply staying present in your life, even when they seem emotionally distant. These moments may feel small, but they carry meaning. Because if someone truly felt nothing, they would disappear completely. They wouldn't maintain quiet contact. They wouldn't continue to show up, even in subtle ways. Yet at the same time, their struggle to express feelings clearly creates emotional confusion. They may act cold when emotions rise. They may avoid deep conversations. They may change the subject when things become too personal. This contrast, caring actions mixed with emotional distance, creates uncertainty that is hard to understand. You may find yourself asking, why do they stay connected if they don't open up? Why do they show care but avoid closeness? The answer often lies in emotional discomfort, not lack of feeling. For many avoidant individuals, expressing deep emotions feels risky. Staying somewhat distant feels safer than being fully vulnerable, so they remain present, but guarded. They care, but quietly. They stay, but cautiously. They connect, but without fully opening their hearts. And recognizing this pattern helps you understand that cold behavior does not always mean absence of feeling. Sometimes it simply reflects fear of showing what they truly feel inside. One of the most emotionally exhausting patterns you may notice with an avoidant is this: they don't leave completely, but they don't stay consistently either. Instead, they disappear and then return. At first, their distance feels sudden. Messages slow down, conversations become shorter, the attention that once felt steady begins to fade. You may feel confused, wondering what changed or what you did wrong. Days pass, sometimes weeks. You start adjusting to their absence. You tell yourself that maybe this is the end. Maybe they've moved on. Maybe it's time for you to do the same. And just when you begin to accept that distance, they come back. Not always in a dramatic way, not with long explanations or deep emotional conversations, but with small signs that reopen the connection. It might be a simple message, a reaction to something you shared, or a short conversation that feels surprisingly normal, as if nothing ever changed. And suddenly, the emotions you tried to settle begin to rise again. This repeating cycle, distance followed by return, is one of the strongest signs that someone may still feel emotionally connected, even if they struggle to show it consistently. Because when someone truly wants to leave, they usually create clear separation. They step away fully. They remove themselves from the connection. But avoidants often do something different. They create distance when emotions feel overwhelming. Then, once the intensity settles inside them, they feel safe enough to reconnect, even if only in small ways. This creates a confusing emotional pattern. You may feel hopeful when they return, relieved to feel their presence again, yet anxious, knowing the distance could happen all over again. It feels like standing in the middle of something unfinished, not fully abandoned, but never fully secure. And that's what makes this cycle so powerful. They don't fully let go, but they don't fully commit. They stay connected just enough to keep the bond alive, but distant enough to protect themselves from feeling overwhelmed. Understanding this pattern helps you recognize that their return is not always a sign of clarity. Sometimes it's simply a sign of unfinished emotions and unresolved fear. The final sign that an avoidant may still have feelings, even if they never say it directly, is this quiet but powerful behavior. They watch from a distance instead of expressing love openly. This sign is subtle, but once you notice it, it becomes difficult to ignore. Even when they seem distant, they are still present in quiet ways. They may not call often, they may not express emotions clearly, they may not openly admit what they feel, but somehow they remain aware of your life. They watch your updates. They react to small things you share. They notice changes even when they don't comment on them directly. It can feel confusing because their presence is quiet, yet consistent in the background. You may wonder why someone who appears emotionally distant still keeps this silent connection alive. Why stay aware if they don't intend to express love openly? For many avoidant individuals, expressing love directly can feel overwhelming. Saying what they feel requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels risky to them. It exposes emotions they may not fully understand or feel ready to handle. So instead of speaking openly, they observe quietly. They stay connected from a safe emotional distance. Sometimes they check in without deep conversation. Sometimes they react without sharing their thoughts. Sometimes they simply remain in the background, making sure the connection hasn't completely disappeared. From the outside, this behavior may look confusing, even frustrating, because love, for many people, means clear communication, emotional openness, and visible effort. But for avoidants, staying present quietly can feel safer than expressing love directly. They feel, but they hesitate to show it. They care, but they struggle to communicate it. They stay connected, but without stepping fully into emotional vulnerability. This silent observation becomes their way of staying close without feeling exposed. However, it's important to recognize something here. Watching from a distance is not the same as building a stable connection. Presence without communication creates uncertainty. Awareness without expression creates emotional distance. And understanding this final sign helps you see the truth more clearly, that sometimes the strongest feelings remain unspoken, not because they don't exist, but because the person feeling them doesn't yet know how to express them in a healthy, open way. After all the confusion, the distance, the mixed signals, and the silent care, there is one truth that most people miss about avoidant love, and that truth has very little to do with them and everything to do with you. For a long time, you may have focused on their behavior, trying to understand their silence, trying to decode their distance. trying to figure out whether they love you or whether they ever did. But the real question isn't only about their feelings. The real question is, how much uncertainty are you willing to live with before you begin protecting your own peace? Because whether they love you or not, your emotional stability matters more than confusion. Your peace matters more than guessing. Your self-respect matters more than waiting. And your well-being matters more than hoping that one day things will magically change. Many people stay stuck in avoidant connections because they believe love means patience without limits. They believe that if they just give more time, more understanding, more effort, eventually everything will work out. But love is not meant to feel like constant uncertainty. Real connection creates safety. Real care creates consistency. Real love doesn't leave you questioning your worth over and over again. This doesn't mean avoidant individuals don't feel love. Sometimes they do, deeply, but feelings alone are not enough to build something stable. Without effort, without communication, without emotional growth, even strong feelings remain incomplete. And this is where your strength begins to matter most. Not the strength to chase, not the strength to wait endlessly, but the strength to step back and observe what you are truly receiving. Self-awareness changes everything. When you start noticing patterns instead of ignoring them, when you start valuing your peace instead of protecting the connection, when you start choosing clarity over confusion, something powerful begins to shift inside you. You stop losing yourself in uncertainty. You stop shrinking to keep someone close. You stop accepting less than what you truly deserve. And that is the real transformation. Because in the end, whether they stay or leave, whether they grow or remain distant, your peace should never depend on someone else's hesitation to love you openly. When you protect your peace, you protect your future. And when you choose emotional strength over emotional confusion, you finally choose yourself.